Welcome to the Authentic Souls Podcast, your go-to destination for honest and perspective-shifting conversations. We're your hosts, Danielle Churchill
and Savannah Nicholson. Join us as we uncover secrets to success and introduce new ideas about intentional, holistic, and intuitive living that will empower you to create a life filled with endless possibilities.
We'll be exploring how spirituality and science intersect to shape our understanding of reality. No topic is off limits, as we're always open to play with new concepts and get a little weird.
So get ready to expand your mind, challenge the norm, and unlock your power within. Today, we had the pleasure of meeting Brittany Bento, a spiritual teacher and intuitive whose mission is to help people align their mind, body, and spirit. She's dedicated her life to serving others through a variety of modalities and showing up as the most authentic version of herself. In this conversation, we discuss how she discovered her spiritual gifts and her transition out of teaching into what she does now.
She shares how everyone has innate psychic abilities, how the intuition can be used as a roadmap for your life, and why you don't need to be afraid of dark energy. Brittany also talks about her experience sharing vulnerably on social media, the importance of using discernment when seeking spiritual guidance, and communicating with a cosmic council called the Beehive. Brittany is a great example of what it looks like to follow your heart, and we hope this conversation inspires you to do the same. Enjoy this episode.
Well, hello, Brittany. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So for anyone listening that isn't familiar with your work, how would you describe what you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I do a few different things, but my main goal is to help people connect with themselves, because we all have an intuition. We all have answers within ourselves. And I do that, I guess, in a few different ways. I do one-on-one readings for people where I do like tarot readings where I connect with the universe, I guess you could say, spirit guides, the universe, and receive messages, guidance, that sort of a thing. I also do social media. I post my readings online. I'm very passionate just about coming home to yourself, coming home to your heart and healing, because that's not something that's really taught in society. We're not really taught how to properly love ourselves. And I think that that's the most important thing anyone can do. And I think that people, often look for answers outside of themselves. So I think that the more I can try to help people connect with their inner power, but that's my goal, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So how did you get interested in this work? Like, where was your starting point with all of this?
Yeah, so I've always been into spirituality, I guess you could say, the spiritual world, ever since I was little. I was raised very Catholic, but I had a lot of paranormal experiences as a child. I would see spirits and stuff like that. And because of my upbringing, there was a lot of fear that was instilled in me because of that. Like, oh, it's a demon, or, like that sort of a thing. So because of that, I really blocked it out for a long time because I was very fearful. But as I got older, I couldn't really get away from this stuff because it always really, really intrigued me. So eventually I got myself my own set of tarot cards. I started buying like crystals. When I was a kid, I used to collect crystals. Like, I thought they were just rocks, but every time we'd go to a store, I'd like want to buy another one to collect them. So I was always just drawn to this sort of a thing. And as time progressed, doing card readings for myself and like friends and like that sort of a thing, eventually the fear started dwindling, if that makes sense. Like, as I got older, I started becoming less and less fearful, and I started diving into it more. And I was a teacher. I used to be a high school teacher. So like that was my job. And then I was just doing it for fun, like on the side, just like learning about, the fun stuff, like, oh, manifestation, like, oh, this, all that, like the fun part of spirituality, I guess you could say. That's kind of like what got me onto the true spiritual path. And a medium actually reached out to me on TikTok and was kind of like, hey, you should develop, like you're a medium. And I was like, as a kid, I thought mediums were like the coolest people. I was like, me? I'm like, what? Because a misconception a lot of people have is that mediums are just like born and they know how to communicate with the spirit world. And it is different for everybody, but it's something that's not really taught, right? And for me, because so much fear was instilled in me, I really blocked it out. So I really stepped more into that in my 20s. And yeah, that's how it kind of started for me. And then I started developing my mediumship. I started learning more about spirit and I started becoming less and less fearful because I started understanding it more, and realizing that a lot of this stuff is just unknown and people fear the unknown. So I started diving into that more, which led to my healing journey, which to me, like the true spiritual path is the healing journey. Like, don't get me wrong, manifestation, crystals, tarot, like all of that is fun. But the true path is like healing and coming home to your heart and tapping into your own intuition because every single one of us has the ability to like tap in because we're all spirit first. It's just a matter of getting yourself there to have the ability to do that. So that's when that journey kind of started for me. And yeah, and then eventually I quit teaching. I jumped into this full time. So that's kind of how the transition happened.
I mean, it sounds like your journey has been very intuitively led. You know, even with that shame growing up, if I shouldn't be doing this, it sounds like you had something deeper that was calling you to pursue this. Yeah.
I always loved it. Like I anything to do with like it started out with paranormal stuff. Like I was so intrigued. Even though it scared me, I was like fascinated by it, you know? And it's this is why too I'm such a big believer in pursuing your passions. Like whatever you're passionate about, anything that intrigues you, even if you have no experience in it, pursue it because there's a reason your soul is pulling you in that direction. Let go of any expectation as to why you're being called in that direction. You know, like when I started this stuff, I had zero expectation of being able to do like I'm so grateful I'm able to do readings and stuff for people. I'm so grateful I'm able to do this full time. But when I started it, I wasn't like, oh, I want to be a reader. So I'm going to start posting online so that I can then quit my job so
Hmm.
that I can then do this. I just did it because I loved it and it led me here. So if you're listening, pursue your passion, whatever it may be, just because you like it and yeah, the path that unfolds is often quite magical. So
Yeah, it's like the true path of the intuition. We talk about that a lot where it's like you have no idea where you're going to end up. You just got to keep following those breadcrumbs and eventually it will lead you to exactly where you need to be. I'd love to hear you speak on that transition from becoming a teacher to doing what you do now cuz I find so many spiritual, sensitive, empathic, psychic people do end up in places of work where they are helping people, where they really want to give themselves to the world.
yeah.
And we can all get a sense of where the like school system is at right now in teaching and how it can be really hard on, I feel like teachers' bodies, minds, like their entire system. So just
Mm.
as far as your own experience, what was that transition like from going, from being teaching to doing what you do now?
Yeah, no, I love that question. Thanks for bringing that up. I was getting chills as you were speaking about how hard teaching can be on like the mind, body, spirit. Because I'm not going to lie, and I'm sure a lot of teachers can agree with me, teaching burnt me out. Like when I tell you I was burnt out. There was a period of time where and I know this after the fact, like in hindsight, it was my spirit guides being like, Brittany, you need to like get out of here. I got a bout of vertigo so bad. I was bedridden for a month. Like I could not go into work. I had to miss work because I couldn't even drive because with vertigo, you're not supposed to drive. And it was so bad. I couldn't even go to the bathroom without like puking. That's how nauseous I was getting. Like my mom had to come and take care of me. My body was like done. Just the amount of work that I know that I was doing outside of the school system too, because I only taught for 5 years. And often your first few years of teaching, you get what a lot of people call a dog's breakfast, where I was teaching so many different courses. Like a lot of like the more senior teachers, they'll have, let's say, socials 11, but they'll have like two or three classes of socials 11, as opposed to like, because like for me, full time was seven different classes, and I was teaching like out of the seven different classes, only two of them were the same. So it was six
Mm.
different classes.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
so much prep work, so much marking, so much everything. Plus, I was coaching because I really wanted to get into the PE. I wanted to teach PE. So I was coaching everything, and I had no life like outside of work essentially. And it eventually got to a point where I remember like waking up and crying before going into work every day. That's how bad I did not want to go. It was terrible. I would come home, I would be exhausted. I didn't have time to take care of myself because I was too tired, like even to like go to the gym or to whatever. It's like I got home, all I wanted to do was veg out because I was done. So through that process, I was like, I don't want to be a teacher for the rest of my life. Like, there's no fucking way. Excuse my language. Like, I was like, there's no way I can do this. I love working with kids though. Like, I loved working with kids. I like helping people. I love that aspect to it. But everything else, I was like, there's no way. And for the pay teachers get, especially, I mean, I don't know in other parts where I live, I was working as a waitress on the side. I remember having three jobs at one point. I was teaching when I first started teaching. I was teaching, I was serving, and I was coaching gymnastics like outside of the school system because I needed to get by because I couldn't live on a teacher's salary. So I was like, screw this, screw this. Like teachers are so undervalued. And I know this is the same thing for other careers too, like nursing. I know it's very similar and whatnot as well. I'm just speaking to my experience as a
Mhm.
teacher, but I know that there's other jobs, other fields where they're undervalued. Also social workers too, I know are very undervalued. Like them, like those two. I remember speaking to a friend who's a social worker, and anyway, she doesn't do that anymore either for similar reasons. But anyways, I hit a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. But I didn't know how to get out. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I went to school for this long. I have already been teaching for X amount of years. I don't want to just like, what am I supposed to do? Like,
Mhm.
so I asked for help. I asked my spirit guides for help. I was like, help me. I was like, help me. I was like, I know I can't do this for the rest of my life, but I don't know what the next steps are. Help me. And from there, I remember I was also looking for something else to do. And I was like, oh, I could be a counselor, you know, then I could eventually open my own practice. And there was, I ended up getting myself into a master's program for counseling because they worked with teachers. It was like a master's program specifically for teachers so that you can, you know, work, but also go to school. So it worked out perfectly. But I was looking for something else to do, but at the same time I really started pursuing my passions and I really started like turning inward. I started like making an effort to change my mindset to be more positive. Esther Hicks was at the time very influential to me. Do you know who
Oh
Esther
yeah.
Mhm.
Hicks
Oh yeah.
is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just like I remember listening to her like I would listen to her words on YouTube in the morning and that really like helped like start
Mhm.
me switch my mindset and that sort of a thing. And even though I was teaching and it was miserable. And that's when I started posting on around COVID is when I started posting on TikTok as well. It was like my spiritual outlet. I was just posting genuinely just because I loved to post and nobody followed me on TikTok. So I was like, oh, nobody knows me. I was like, I could post my spiritual stuff and nobody's going to judge me on here until it, you know, wasn't a secret anymore and I couldn't hide it anymore. So I got forced out of, you know, trying to like hide that part of me. But I started pursuing my passion on the side just because I loved it, which was like, you know, the spirituality stuff and posting about it and talking about it. Um, and then eventually people started like asking, do you do readings? Do you do readings? And for a while I was like I do, but like not for the public, you know? And for a very short period of time, I started doing readings while teaching and it was just too much and I couldn't do it anymore. So I stopped that and I was still teaching and more people were asking me like, do you do readings? Do you do readings? And then I had a really big breakup with my boyfriend at the time. We were living together. And after that breakup, I was like, I really evaluated my life. I was like, I'm miserable teaching. If I'm being really honest with myself, I don't want to be a counselor. Like, that's not what I want to do. I'm doing it because I don't want to teach anymore. So it was the safe option because it's a good job. Society looks at counselors in a good light. I knew that there was a good benefit still, good pension, all of the things. I knew my boyfriend at the time approved of it. I knew my parents thought it was a good thing that I was doing. So I really sat with that and I was like, no, I wouldn't hate counseling. It's kind of in alignment with me, but am I excited about it? No. You know, it's not that it doesn't light me up. And I was like, I have so many people asking if I want to do readings. And I was like, do you know what? Screw this. Or after the breakup, it happened to be summer break. So the timing for me was so divine. It was really perfect timing. So after the breakup, summer, I ended up not getting a second job that summer. I was like, I'm not working through the summer. I'm focusing all on me. And I really dove into this work. I started in my YouTube, I started my podcast. I just really started putting it out there. And I had the goal of quitting in December or January, like once the semester was over. And I went back to work in September, and I actually realized, screw this shit. I need to quit now. I'm just gonna like risk it and I'm gonna dive all in. And everyone thought I was crazy. I ended up dropping out of school too. I dropped out of the master's program like that summer. Dropped out of the master's program. I quit my job in September. I went back to work for 1 month and I was like, okay, I'm taking the risk. And it was one of the scariest things I ever could have done because at the time I didn't have nearly the following that I have now. So people thought I was crazy. Like when I tell you, like nobody agreed with me, nobody agreed with me. And it was out of love because, family and friends wanted the best for me, but they didn't support it. I didn't even tell my parents because I knew that they weren't going to agree with it. But I trusted myself enough. I trusted my intuition enough because by that time, how I said I started turning inward, I started shifting my mindset, I started connecting with myself more. And that little voice was like, it's scary, but you have to do it. So I trusted that. And I did. And that was about a year and a half after asking for help. So I was like,
Mm.
help me. And it took about a year and a half to get to that point where I was able to quit. But I quit because the universe provided me with an opportunity. It wasn't what I was looking for. You know how I was looking outside of myself. I was in a master's program, whatever. This was something that was like brought to me in divine timing. Something like, if I could say really quick, like when people are like unhappy with where they're at, especially a job, it's really easy to look outside of them. If you're working at McDonald's and then it's like, oh, I need to find something else. I need to find something else. Oh, well, let's get a retail job. They jump into something outside of, they jump into something else and it might be better for about a year because it's a different environment, new people, X, Y, and Z, but you'll most often find yourself back right to where you were because you didn't actually take the time to figure out, what really
Mm-hmm.
is in alignment with you. So if you're in a place where you're uncomfortable, like that's okay. That uncomfortability can is where growth happens. Like that year and a half is where the growth happened for me. And that's what provided me with the opportunity down the line to step out, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so know that like because like we're taught, oh, you're uncomfortable, let's get rid of that uncomfortability, let's get rid of it as soon as we can. And it's reminding yourself like, okay, I'm uncomfortable because my soul is communicating with me, my soul is telling me that this is not where I'm supposed to stay. It doesn't necessarily mean you're supposed to jump out of that situation right away. Turn within, focus within, trust the divine timing, and by doing that an opportunity will be presented to you. Then it's up to you to take it though,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
it's often scary. It often might feel like a risk. Yeah, so that's how I transitioned from teaching to what I do now.
Mm. And what a blessing it was that you had that summer, because I think that's the biggest thing. Like you were saying, it's so easy to jump into something new, but having that time to really sit with yourself and be like, what do I really want deep down? So that's awesome. I want to go back a little bit. You had mentioned earlier that you had this moment where a medium was like, you have these abilities, you need to tap into them. Can you talk about that process, that journey of you maybe noticing things that you thought were normal and you're like, oh no, these are my abilities, and how you kind of just dove into that work even further?
Yeah, no, I love that. One thing I want to say is we're all spirit first. So every single one of us has the ability to connect. Every single one of us. With that said, it's like anything in life. Everyone can learn how to play soccer. However, you're going to have people who work really hard at it. So they're really good. You're going to have other people who are naturally gifted. So they're also really good. And then you're going to have the people who work really hard plus who are naturally gifted. And that's kind of, the professional level. But that's one thing I want to say. Like a lot of people are like, oh, mediums just have these special gifts and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, we're all spirit. We all have that ability and we all have our unique gifts and abilities. So if it is something you're interested in, know that it is something that you can develop. But going back to your question, yeah, when the medium reached out to me, I was shocked at first because I was always under the impression that mediums were just, out of the womb, like knowing what they're doing. So I was excited, but a little curious. And I was already doing tarot readings and stuff at this time. So I I didn't realize how similar kind of the two are, like doing mediumship versus like psychism. It's very similar, and I didn't really realize that until I went through development. And this is where like development is really important as well. And if you do have abilities or want to develop your abilities, I really do recommend getting some sort of formal development. Yeah, for those listening too, that's just something I really feel the need to say too, because yeah, you're really working with people who are vulnerable, and it's really important to understand what it is, who it is you're connecting with, and to be able to differentiate between the voice of your ego and not filtering things through your ego, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
that's just something I want to say. But there was definitely things that I realized I was doing my whole life that I thought were normal that I realized was not, no, I don't want to say not normal because it was normal, I guess, but I realized I was kind of tapping into spirit without realizing it. My friends would always come to me for advice, and even if like never experienced what they've experienced or whatever, I always just like knew what to say. I'd get this like feeling in my chest and I'd get like tingles all over my body, and I just like knew what to say to them. And through development, I realized that that feeling is often like receiving something. Like there's like an intuitive hit. There's something that you're channeling, receiving, and I'm like, "Oh, that's what that is." I'm like, I thought everybody experienced that, you know? Like I didn't really realize that. So little things like that, you know, like the feelings. Also, yeah, also just because it's different for everybody, and the way people connect with spirit, it very much so is different for everyone. For me, I'm very like I feel a lot, like I take on, and I can feel people's energies a lot too. That was another thing. I'd be able to like walk in a room, and I just kind of would know a person. I don't know. I don't want to say know a person, but like just I just would know a person, like just kind of like the have an idea of their energy, I guess, who they are just naturally. And I realized I'm just like reading energy. I could feel energy very, very easily. And again, I just thought that that's something that like everybody can do. And then through development, I realized like, oh, that's what I'm doing. And oh, I can turn it on and off. Like I could choose to tune into it or I cannot tune into it. Because that's another thing too, is some like beforehand, you know, it could be taking when you are very sensitive and feel energy, it can be like exhausting not being able to differentiate like what's mine, what's not mine. Like sometimes I take on emotions that were not my emotions. I'm like, why am I feeling this way? And then through development I realized like, oh, like I'm feeling somebody else's energy, and it's not me, it's, you know, it's something else. And yeah, those sorts of things. So, you know, little things like that through development, I realized I learned what I was doing, which is why, you know, development I think is really, really important. Also, like just like the ethical side of it too, because unfortunately, like this world is unregulated. There's a lot of people, unfortunately, in this work that don't hold ethics, don't hold strong ethics, or they don't know better because they haven't been through development, and it can be dangerous. And, you know, don't just listen to someone just because they say they're a medium, just because they say they're psychic. Like, because people will say that, and often a lot of people are like, "Oh, really?" And they take what they say for truth all the time.
Mhm.
And it's just important to be careful, because not everybody in this work is in integrity. So, um, yeah, that's just another little side note. But
Well, I feel like also check in with yourself. I feel like if we
mm,
ever talk to, I don't know, a psychic or medium or any kind of energy reader, or like if anyone's giving you advice anywhere in life, like
yeah,
I feel like it's always which they should be confident in their work. Like that is, you know, we come to them for services and for their guidance a lot of the time, but also like be equally as confident in yourself and ask yourself,
yeah,
does this resonate? You know what I mean? You
yeah,
know yourself the best. So don't give
yeah.
your power to someone else.
Yeah, no, 100%,
Yeah.
100% trust yourself. And even before I do readings for people, one of the first things I always say is trust yourself over anything. Don't
Hmm.
make any crazy wild decisions just because the cards told you so. Like trust yourself first and foremost. Like you hold the power here. You're the
Hmm.
one in control. So I love that you say that. I agree 100%. And just do your research before choosing who you get a reading with, because there's a lot of great readers out there who are in
Hmm.
integrity that, you know, receive great, beautiful messages and can relay beautiful guidance. So there's some really beautiful readers out there. Just, yeah, don't just get a reading with anyone and listen. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We've had, you know, through life experience and also doing what we do, when you're getting a reading, I think it's really important as the facilitator to interpret the messages and not present them in a terrifying or scary way. That's one of the
Mhm.
things that's like really kind of honestly bothered
Yes.
the two of us. It's like if you pull a
Mhm.
death card, the last thing I want someone to say is, "Oh, be prepared to die." It's like, no, that is so irresponsible. And we've
Yeah.
had people come to us and like share that experience, and it breaks my heart because I'm
Yeah.
like, that will implant so much fear in the way you live your life. And I think that's totally like wrong. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
people where that's their first experience with tarot and they're like, oh yeah, they said I'm going to die young. And I'm like, why would you tell someone that? That's awful. Like that could mean maybe you're going through a rebirth, like a version of you is like, why would you just be like, oh, sorry. That's what the cards say.
No, yeah. And that's exactly what I mean. Like, don't just believe anyone. And nobody should be instilling fear in you. That's like a whole, like, I love that you brought that up too, because that's a whole other thing that I could go on a tangent. I won't, but like, I could. It's, spirit is loving. They're going to bring through words of wisdom and guidance. They're not going to bring through something to instill fear in you. So if that's, if the reader is, maybe they truly believe that's the message, but they're receiving that through the lens of their ego, what I was saying before, like that's their misconception that's based on their beliefs. So that can get in the way, and that can that's how like the true message can be misinterpreted, and it can cause more harm than good. And it's sad because it really does turn people off. I always like the way I do my readings, at least. It's not to tell you what to do in life. It's not to tell you what to do. It's not to tell you where to go. It's not to tell you, oh, this is what your future holds. It's more so, okay, this is the energy I'm feeling right now. This is the guidance coming through for you based on where you're at to help you figure out where you want to go next. That's kind of like how I like to do my readings. It's more so guidance surrounding things as opposed to this is your next step, because spirit's never going to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
That would take away from why we're here and the learning process that we agreed to coming down here,
Yeah. 100%.
I feel like we're entering a new phase of whether I guess in just this part of life, I guess like with sessions and healing and coming to someone for expertise on a certain situation. I feel like the new wave of things is seeing both people as equals rather than one person being like put on a pedestal and being like, I know it's right. Because I feel like that's definitely a way of the past. And so coming at it, it's like, again, another red flag to look out for. If someone's like, I'm better than you, I know what your answers are, like I can see your future, then I think that's something to look out for. Something that I felt called to say also, if you feel, because this is like my own personal experience, if you do feel energy, if you feel like you said how you'll be talking to someone and they're asking you for advice and you just like immediately know what to say, that is the most beautiful thing. And I've experienced that so many times. But if they have not asked you for advice, you don't always need to give them the message. And like you said, when to turn it on and when to turn it off. And when you said that, I was like, oh, that was one of the biggest lessons for me to learn, is that just because I was tapping into this like channeling intuitive like thing, that I was like, oh, I know
divine
what to
intelligence.
say. Yeah, I know what to say right now. But if they're not receptive, if they're not open to it, if they haven't asked you, then, maybe that's just for you to be aware of.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. No, I 100% love that. I totally agree with that.
So I found you on TikTok, as most people probably do at this point. I would love to know how social media has like played a role in you sharing your gifts. I often have these moments when we're on our podcast and interviewing people and having these conversations of like, this is just so normal to us. This is our everyday, but how incredible it is that we can share these conversations in two different places and using technology to get this information out there. And another, beautiful platform, like you said, where you've grown an audience and you've been able to create this new life for yourself is TikTok. So, or Instagram as well. But I feel like that's where I've seen you in like over and over again on my For You page. So I'd love for you to speak about that experience and what you just think about that whole world as far as getting these messages out there.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I'm super grateful. I'm super grateful for social media for that reason, because it was what provided me the opportunity to quit my job and to, live the life I'm living now. So I'm super grateful. With that said, social media, it can be a dangerous world. There's a lot of people online. There's a lot of people with opinions. It's, I always say, don't believe everything that you see online. You also it's very unregulated social media. I got a lot of hate, especially on TikTok. I remember at one point I almost deleted my account because I had somebody make a video about me and the video was not really true. Like, it wasn't rooted in truth, what they were saying. And I was getting death threats. I was getting like like his video went totally viral, and it's when I was like a smaller account, and oh my God, I was getting death threats. I was getting just like so many messages. People are like, you scammer. And at the time, I wasn't even doing readings for people. I was still teaching. I was like, scammer. What do you mean scammer? Like, what are you talking about? So that was really hard, but it really taught me to like not to base my worth on other people's opinions, like whether it be a good or bad opinion. It's like not letting the good comments get to my head and not letting the bad comments tear me down, just
Mm-hmm.
staying at a very neutral place and knowing everyone has an opinion and people don't actually know who I am. Like they have an idea of who I am, but they don't actually know who I am. So it's not taking anything personally, if that makes sense. It's like just really remaining neutral on everything. But I think, social media can be really great too for helping people, building community, building connection, putting your voice out there. I think there's a lot of positives. I also think there's a lot of negatives. It's like anything in life, there's the light and the dark to it. So I'm super grateful for social media. TikTok, it is my biggest platform, but my favorite platform is actually YouTube, which is my smallest one, which I'm building slowly. I love my little YouTube. I do love Instagram as well, but yeah, it's an interesting world, and I'm definitely grateful for it. Just don't believe everything you hear online. Going back to what Savannah said, it's like listen to yourself, listen to your intuition, trust yourself. If somebody says like even me, if I talk about something and you don't resonate with it, you don't agree with it, that's okay. Like you don't have to agree with everything that I say. I have some pretty strong opinions on like certain areas, and I believe in speaking your truth. I think everyone should speak their truth. So I'm going to speak my truth. With that said, it's okay if you disagree with my truth, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, when you get hate on the internet, man, like at least with myself, I want to be seen because the content that I'm sharing feels so aligned and I know it's going to help people. So I'm like, oh, like the more people that see this, great. But you also get the other side where it's like you are triggering the shit out of some people and they're going to be so upset with you for what you said or how you look or whatever it may be. I'm so grateful that at 30 years old, I'm just now kind of hitting my stride online because I'm like, I couldn't have handled this 10 years ago. Like I would have been a mess. Like my confidence wasn't there, my confidence in myself and my abilities, all of those things. So I'm like, now I can just let it roll off my back. Honestly, I can laugh at it because I'm like, whatever. I'm very secure in where I am in my life. But I think it's kind of a meter with where we're at in the world. And if anything, it just like fuels me even more to keep going because I'm like, there is so much hurt in this world. And I am so sorry if I'm triggering the person online, but this is just like a sign that there is so much more healing that needs to be done. So like, I'm just going to keep going. And then you get that one message where someone's like, you've changed my life. And I'm like, what? Okay, I'll keep that. That'll like keep me going for like another 6 months,
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you're posting about. Someone's always going to have something negative to say about it. And like you said, you just have to laugh. And as long as you're showing up and your mental health is right, like I feel like you can have those moments where you just look at it from just an open perspective where you're like, something's going on with them. It has really at the end of the day nothing to do with what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Like everything is a mirror, right? A reflection. And it's remembering, okay, if a person, like even like when I'm triggered, I'm like, okay, I'm triggered. I sit with that. I'm like, okay, where is this coming from? And like I have the ability to like look within and realize like, okay, this is something like coming from inside of me. How can I deal with that? Whereas old Brittany, is like triggered, like, oh, this person, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? And so, like you said, the people are so wounded. People are so wounded at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like they're so wounded. And a lot of people are operating off wounds and they're not even conscious of it. They're not aware of it. This is, again, why I stress healing so much, like healing, healing, healing. But yeah, I love social media, but I also, there's the light and dark. And just stand in your light.
Yeah. It's inevitable. There's always going to be that polarizing energy. And as long as you understand that it's going to happen regardless, like you can just show up confident in what you have to say.
Yeah. And if you're in your truth, like it's you feel so stable in that where it's like you can't blow me over. If you're making something for views, for likes, for like the ego
approval,
then you're gonna be really affected when it doesn't hit the way you want it to hit. But if you're just showing up and as your authentic truthful self, it's like, well, this is me, take
Yeah.
it or leave it. And then when it does hit, sometimes it's like, it's such a celebratory moment because you're like, oh, okay, like
People get it.
people get it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And yeah, no, 100%. And that's like another thing. A lot of people will base their worth on the amount of likes their video gets or the amount of views their video gets, the amount of comments. And it's like, post it because you want to post it and then don't worry about the rest. Like, don't worry about the rest. Trust that like who's meant to come across the video will, and that's all that matters. Um, yeah, because it can be easy to fall into that trap too. Like, oh, like how many likes did it get? How many views did it get? And that's like another thing that over the years I learned to like like not base my worth on it. Like it doesn't matter. I'm posting this for me. And if you followed me for a while, you'll see that my content has shifted so much over time because I post what I want to post, not what people expect me to post, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to hear what you enjoy posting about, and then maybe even your process of, who or what are you tapping into, and is there kind of like a theme to the messages that you're getting, or is it more you asking questions that you're seeking answers for in your own life?
Yeah,
Yes.
because I like to say that I found you during your channeling days. I don't know. I
Okay,
haven't
yeah,
seen
yeah,
a
yeah.
video posted like that in a while, which
Yeah.
is totally fine. You know, like you said, you
Yeah,
go at your
yeah.
own pace, whatever you're feeling. But that was like, I just thought so brave of you to share because again, you're just showing up like truly authentic. And like, I remember sending it to some friends, like so impressed because I was like, you're real,
Aw.
like you're just be sharing so vulnerably and in a
Yeah.
state that like a lot of people could, label as whatever they want. And I was like, this girl's so cool. Like I think
Aw.
this is so cool. And then also like when you brought up Abraham Hicks or Esther Hicks at the beginning of this, I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like I'm connecting the two experiences that I saw. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, where do I start? So
Yeah.
for me, like I really I started posting like dowsing rod videos. That's kind of when my account started to like grow. I don't know if you know what dowsing rods
Mm-hmm.
are, but like it's for those listening, it's a form of divination. So similar to like a pendulum, but it's like these two sticks that you hold in your hand that like I would say like cross for yes, open for no. And I would ask questions, and that's kind of how it really started for me. And then I just kind of grew out of the dowsing rods, and that was really, really popular. And people were like, why don't you post them anymore? I'm like, well, they just don't bring me joy anymore. It's like, post what excites you, like what excites you. That's going back to pursuing your passions, that spark that lights you up, right? It's not, if I'm doing it because it feels like a chore because I have to for my audience, then that's the energy behind it is just not, it's more rooted in ego for views, for this, for that. Um, so I always kind of stuck to that, just, whatever brings me joy. And then with the channeling, that's when my channeling really started opening up, when I really started realizing that, I say like divine intelligence, like tapping into the ether, the universe, like something we all have the ability to tap into. Um, and honey kept coming through, like this group, they described themselves as like a beehive, which is like me and my friend, we started a community that we now call the Beehive. It's kind of like all come full circle, but they describe themselves as like a beehive. It's like a collection of beings essentially. And again, like everyone has the ability to tune in, to tap in, and my channeling started opening up, and that's when I was really excited about that. So I was really posting videos on that. And I still do channel. It's not as, I want to say like dramatic now, because now that I'm more like comfortable with it, it's like I tune in and I could channel. I just bring through whatever comes through, as opposed to I don't know how to articulate it, but my channeling looks different now, if that makes sense.
Well, I think just from observation, it was like the beginning. So you really had to
Yes.
surrender to let spirit take over so you could really differentiate what is me, what is spirit. So now I can get a sense that you're probably like you've mastered that skill more. So it's less of, I don't know,
It's
like a dramatic shift, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, because you're right, that was the beginning. And yeah, it was new, and that's where, yeah, it can be scary and definitely like vulnerable posting those things. But again, it excited me, so I wanted to. Um, and I've always like kind of posted tarot readings. That's something that I love to do. I love my tarot cards. Not that I could channel a message without using the tarot cards. I use tarot as a tool to help, but it's not necessary. I just love tarot. So I'll post probably a tarot video once a day. That's something I've been pretty consistent with. There have been times where I don't really post tarot at all. I think when I was really channeling, I was like, no, I don't want anything to do with tarot. I was like, I just want to channel because it was fun and new and exciting. And I also love to post, like I post some workout videos now, some food videos. I also, very mind, body, spirit. I also have I have a podcast with my friend called the Multiple Truths podcast. And then I do like my own little like podcast slash YouTube. It's more of like I don't know if diary is the right word, but I talk about whatever it is that I want to talk about. And as I talk about these things, I kind of just open myself up and anything that wants to come through, kind of similar to what I was talking about before, just like knowing advice to give. It's like as I'm talking, more information just kind of like comes through and I get like the chills all over and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be talking about right now. And I just kind of like let it flow. And I'll post like clips of that, like little reels of like little clips and just kind of like whatever I want. Sometimes I just do a bunch of different stuff. It literally just depends like what I'm in the mood for. Um, yeah, I hope does that answer your
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
I
I'm curious because we've talked to, people who have different processes as far as this goes. Like some people are kind of always open. Like we could be having a conversation and they're like, oh, something dropped through. Like I need to tell you this. And then we have some people that are like, if I'm in direct conversation with someone, it is completely closed off. And I take, specific time to go and tap in and
Yeah.
receive the messages. What do your boundaries look like with that? Are you always open? Do you set aside time to
have you
do
gotten
that?
anything to drop in this conversation?
So not really in this conversation. I've definitely got chills as like a few things were said and stuff. When I do like my readings and stuff for people, that's when like I really like tune in, drop in. Um, Often I want to say like a mix of both. Like it depends what the conversation's about, if that makes sense. Like I find, yeah, it depends what the conversation's about, what it is. If I'm just like out in public, I'm pretty closed off. Like I'm just like be grounded in this human experience. Sometimes I say the most spiritual thing you can do is be human. We're here to have this 3D experience to enjoy this world. And that's something I needed to learn too, because when this was really opening up for me, I was like in the clouds. I was really in the clouds and I was like disconnected from my body. And it's really learning how to like merge the two and marry the two. And you don't really, I don't want to say you don't want to be open all the time because I'm not telling you what to do here, but it's being human, being grounded in this physical body. And there's nothing wrong with like having drop-ins because there's definitely times where like, I'm just like at home and something like drops in and whatnot. But often it'll be when I'm like, when you're like not really thinking, it's
Mhm.
like when the mind is closed off, when the mind is closed, when I'm just doing my thing, like things do drop in sometimes. But when I'm out in public and with people, I'm very much so in the 3D world with myself and with people. And then if we get into a conversation and it's kind of like more in depth or more, we start talking about those things, then naturally I just kind of like, I don't, naturally it's just something that opens up if that makes sense. But
Mhm.
for the most part, if I'm going to do a reading for someone, I choose to tune into it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have a ritual or anything you do to kind of protect your energy since you are open most of the time?
Yeah, so I again, it's just being like very aware and connected to your body. Like um this is another thing. There's a lot of fear that's kind of instilled in the spiritual community, like, oh, and I'm not saying you shouldn't protect yourself, but it's like protect yourself. You need to do this, and this ritual in order to stay protected. Otherwise, you're in danger. And it's protection can look different for everyone. I believe the mind is so powerful. And if doing a specific ritual makes you believe that you're more protected, then absolutely it's going to have that effect because that's what you've associated it to, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, it's just through my development and through becoming aware, like now I'm able to differentiate between what's mine and what's not mine. So if I'm feeling something that's not mine, I
Yeah.
know how to like
Yeah.
shake it off. I know how to, you know what I'm saying, or
Hmm.
just leave the situation or whatever it may be. Um, and that's kind of yeah, that's more so like what I do. I love Palo Santo. Like that's something that like I just, I love every morning, like a part of my morning routine is to like I Palo Santo myself. I Palo Santo my technology, my space. And not that you have to do that, but it's something that I do, and it's probably even a mental thing, like, clearing the space, clearing the energy. Um, but essentially it's just for me, like with the protection, it's just being having the awareness of what's mine and what's not mine. And if I'm feeling something that's not mine, it's, knowing, okay, that's not mine, and not letting it affect me. You know, uh, Something that came through to me the other day, well, I'm sure you've heard this before, is your power lies in your ability to see in the dark.
Mm.
And what came through to me with that, because I had an experience I had a mystical experience a couple weeks ago, an unexpected one. And I was around some very, very dark energy, and I was really feeling it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like there's some like dark energy around here. And the message I got, your power lies within, or your power lies within your ability to see in the dark. And if you have the ability to see in the dark, if you can see it, it has no power over you. So it's again like that awareness. And the more you get to know yourself, the more you embark on the healing journey, the more you will be able to see in the dark, if that makes sense. You'll be able to recognize it. And the more you're aware of it, it won't have power over you. Does
Oh
that
my
make sense?
gosh. This is, what you just said, I think speaks to me more than anything anyone else has said around the whole, like, how do you protect your energy? Like the rituals, like the whole song and dance that you have to do. And if you don't do this, then you're not spiritual, and you're not actually a healer, and you're not psychic, and you're not it's like you said, the most spiritual thing you can do is be human and be grounded in your body and be able to discern energy and what is right for you and what is not. And I relate to that so much because no, I don't have a daily practice and a ritual and a routine. Like that's not what my days look like. What I have created is an environment. Like my home is or our home, we live together, is and like that was very intentional. Is such a sacred, light, bright, healing, colorful, like it's soul giving. Like I feel good here. And when I'm in an environment that I don't feel good in, it is so apparent. I know that like I am so much more susceptible to negative energies, to not feeling good, in my body. So like being aware of where you are, like where you're like I love my job. I like all of these things are my ritual, is like making sure my life is aligning and feels good. And then when I'm around especially people or environments that bring me, like you said, discerning what is yours and what is not. And the second you start to feel that, you cut it off. You excuse yourself, especially as like a sensitive person. I will, I don't know, I'll just get overwhelmed. I'll get anxiety. I'll have like different physical things come up. And the amount of times that I've tried to push through in my life because like, oh, I'm supposed to be here. Oh, like this is what people expect of me. They're going to think some way of me if I don't show up in this way. It's like, what I need to do right now is go take care of myself. And sometimes that looks like I need to go recalibrate and just like lay in my bed and like drink some water until I feel okay again. And that's my ritual. You know what I mean? Like resting, like you said, eating nutritious food, making sure I'm moving, like all of those things I think is so powerful. And then what you said, like if you can just hold awareness for the darkness, like it can't touch you. Like all it does, it's, I've talked about this before, like the idea of like a pimple. I know this is really gross, but like it's a visual that we've all experienced, like a cystic acne pimple that's really gross, really dark. None of us want that, but it can't cut. Like the only way it's going to heal is if it comes to the surface. So if you can allow it to just like come to the surface, be aware of it, it's going to heal. It'll just dissipate and heal and do its thing. And you can alchemize it. It's like I've also had maybe around Halloween, we'll watch a couple of scary movies just to get into the spirit. But like, they don't penetrate me or affect me the way they used to. Cause now I look at it and I'm like, that poor little spirit is just so scared. Like it just needs to be seen. Like
it needs love.
It
That's
needs
all
love.
It needs.
It's not trying to scare you. And if it is, it's just coming from like a place of fear and hurt. And like, it's like, I'm the most obnoxious person to watch a movie like that with. Cause I'm like, oh, that poor person is so wounded. But
no,
like
you sound like me. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So anyway, you saying that, I'm like, that makes so much sense. And it's like taking people off their pedestal, like taking yourself off a pedestal and being like,
that's what I was gonna say before, the pedestal thing.
Okay. Yeah. Go on that.
Just like I forgot exactly what I was going to say, but I knew it was about the pedestal thing. You should like don't put people on pedestals. Don't put anybody on pedestals. Like what I always say is don't put me on a pedestal because I'll only disappoint you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I know having a following, sometimes I've been put on pedestals before and it actually makes me feel very uncomfortable. I don't like it because I will only disappoint you, you know? And
Hmm.
that goes with anybody that you put on pedestals, even like celebrities and whatnot. They're human. They're human at the end of the day. They're going to make mistakes. They're not their truth might be different than your truth, you know, going back to that discernment. So that's something that I really wanted to say. But talking about the darkness, there was something I wanted to mention too, because being aware, like you said, being aware of the darkness, because darkness will fear on vulnerability. If you know who you are, again, going back to the healing and self-love journey, if you know who you are, you're confident in who you are, you're not going to be vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Hmm.
like once you can see the darkness and you're aware of it and you know who you are, it has no effect over you. It's when you're vulnerable. It's when you're, I hate to say weak, right? But because we all go through life where there's periods where we're more vulnerable and whatnot. But anyways, I could go on another tangent, so I'll leave it there. But um,
I would love to know because Leo, the Lionsgate portal is tomorrow, and we'll be releasing this in 1 week. So the energy will still kind of be there. I'd love to know if you have any messages like regarding kind of this phase that we're in right now.
that's a good question. If I'm being completely honest, like I find it fascinating, like, oh, the Lionsgate portal, I find it fascinating, but I really don't know much about astrology. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm no astrologer. So for me to say anything on it, I think would just be me talking shit out of my ass, if I'm being completely honest.
Have you felt anything in yourself, like knowing that I love this time of the year? So I'm just curious. And if you don't,
Yeah.
that's totally fine.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I'm very much so like I really follow my intuition. And I recently just launched a new community with my friend, partner, business partner, Holly. And we're like putting new things into the world that coincidentally happens to line up with this time, you know? So
Hmm.
it's
There
like
you go.
I don't think it's a coincidence that things are lining up that way. And I feel like, you know, I've heard things about the Lionsgate portal. So I'm like, do you know what? I'll probably do like a little something tomorrow. Like I might like sit and write out my manifestations or, you know, whatever it may be. Um, and I do feel, yeah, I do feel like there's things that are being birthed into creation right now. Like I don't know
Hmm.
how else to explain it. Like I do feel like this new energy. So I do, that is what I'm kind of like feeling. Is it related to the Lionsgate portal? It very much so could be, you know, but yeah, I hope that yeah, does that kind of answer
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
the
I
question?
feel the same way with astrology. I don't follow it really closely, but I will notice that where something's already happening and then the way it
Mhm.
lands is in the exact energy of where it's supposed to be. So I think just even like you said, being intuitively led, you don't have to necessarily know what's going on outside of that, but there's a reason that you're doing it at that time.
Yeah. And I love that you say that because I love astrology. I think it's fascinating. Don't get me wrong. I believe in it. I think it's fascinating. I just don't know enough about it because there's so much to astrology. I just
Yeah.
know like the very basics. I know my sun, moon, and rising, and like that's about it. But I always say like astrology is like a roadmap. I think it's like a really good map. If a person is maybe struggling with connecting to their intuition, get into astrology, learn about your astrological chart, learn about your birth chart because it's a really, really good guide map. I know for me, I had like certain lines, I forget what lines they're even called, but certain lines that went through San Diego, and I didn't even know that. And last summer, I felt called to go to San Diego, and I was there for 3 months, and holy shit, huge transformation happened to me. That's when I was channeling. That's when a lot of
Mm,
things really started opening up for me. And after the fact, I realized that I have huge lines that run through San Diego, and I was like, "Oh shit!" I'm not really surprised. My intuition led me there. But if you're not as in tune with your intuition, like that's okay. Everyone's at different places. Astrology is a great guide map
yeah.
in that sense. It can really like help lead you to kind of where your soul's calling you, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, it's like the intuition is a roadmap as well, right? Just different. So it's like they both
Yeah.
lead you to the same place. It's just kind of
Yeah.
different modalities for getting there.
Totally. Astrology is more like, I don't know if factual is the right word, but it's like you can see it. Do you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
There's some
It's
structure
like
to
it.
it. There's not a lot of
Yes,
structure to intuition. Kind of
exactly.
just
Yeah.
flows where it's going to flow.
Mhm.
Well, happy Leo, Lionsgate portal to anyone celebrating. I'm celebrating. I love this energy, and I think it just like really provides like a supportive energy towards manifesting the things that you desire and stepping into like, just think of like a lion. I just think about like bright, light, yellow, confident, powerful. And it really just kind of fuels me to set up. I like look at this almost as like my new year. I know that's really strange because it's like doesn't really align. And again, as far as going like living intuitively, this is like very much for me, like the way I see it. But anyway, I just think it's a really exciting time to just kind of look at, even though I know we're still kind of like halfway through the year, but like look at the next year. And I think like, people will want to make a vision board or something like right before the new year or right before the astrological new year in April. And I'm kind of like, or in March, I guess it would be. And for me, it kind of makes sense. Like, give it a second. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's kind of fun to be like, okay, I'm going to look at my next year now and kind of look at and redefine what I want it to look like, clear out some things now. So when that time does come, I'm like ready to go.
It's interesting you say that because one of a channeled message, tarot message, whatever you want to call it, that I've been getting a lot recently is like, ooh, I'm getting chills. A big message I've been getting a lot is like between like now and December, there's going to be a lot of shift for people in different ways. But like internal shift, it's like this energy of, I don't know, like over between now and like December, things like growing, but then really seeing more of like the fruits kind of next year. So that's like a message I've been getting. So I don't know if that kind of like.
Oh yeah, I got chills.
Absolutely.
I got the chills now. It's just sending chills back and forth. No, that's exactly how I feel.
It feels like a time to take action of like, like you said, like planting those seeds, going out there, getting your fingers dirty, and then waiting a little bit, and those things are going to start to sprout, which is really exciting.
Absolutely.
Well, one question we love to ask our guests is, what do you feel your purpose is in this life?
Yeah. So I love that purpose. And one thing I want to say quickly too, a lot of people stress about what's my purpose? I need to find my purpose. And I always say like, don't focus on your purpose, focus on you. The more you get to know yourself, your purpose will emerge and your purpose can change and shift as time goes. I know that I'm here to serve, like to serve God, source, the universe, whatever it is you want to call it. Like that's why I'm here. That's why I came here. And I know that. And I know I have other purposes too. I know I'm supposed to be a mom. I know that I'm supposed to do, X, Y, and Z, but I'm here to serve and I'm open to serve in any which way, in any way. And I know that um I feel like I'm living my purpose right now by doing the work that I'm doing. And I know that it's going to shift as time goes. Like I'm here to serve, and wherever I'm guided, wherever I'm led, I'm going to walk that path. So, yeah, my purpose is to serve. And I know that might sound broad, but I truly feel, that's where my heart is. And knowing that I also want to say, know that you can fulfill your purpose in many different ways. It doesn't need to be like one thing. Like my purpose is tarot. It's like, okay, not necessarily. I'm serving and tarot is as a tool I'm using to help me serve. Does that make sense?
I feel like this whole interview has been you describing the different ways you serve, even like when you were teaching, that was still your purpose at the time. And so just like letting that service and letting that purpose kind of transform as you go and not like gripping onto one thing super tightly and being like, I am a teacher. So I think it's good to have kind of like you said,
it's more of a broad energy.
Yeah.
It's like the energy that you want to embody, and you can embody that in so many different ways, which is so fun. It gives you the freedom to explore what that's going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the joys of being human. We have free will here. Like a part of it is free will. Like when free will and destiny intertwine, it's just the most magical thing. You are it's like the what's that analogy of like a painter? Like you have the paintbrush. You're the one painting, you're creating your reality. And it's purpose. Some people like latch onto it and it's like, don't worry about that. Focus on you. And by focusing on you and discovering about you, you're naturally going to align with it and you can express it in any which way you choose. So yeah, that's the fun of it.
Oh,
well, completely agree. I love that.
This has been such a beautiful conversation. And I think you're such a great example for like being courageous and stepping into your purpose and just living your authentic life. And when we interview someone who's like really living in their authentic expression, because that's the whole point of this podcast, it just is so inspiring. And I know it's going to serve our audience so much. So thank you so much for just showing up and being you, like you said.
Thank you. No, I really do appreciate that. And I'm just a mirror of you guys. Like you guys are doing the damn thing too. So I just want to acknowledge that. But yeah, no, thank you. This conversation was so fun. I could talk about this stuff all day. So
Oh, so fun. So for anyone listening that wants to follow you, there's that.
So for anyone listening, there's been a thumbs up like bubble popping up every so often. And I'm just taking it a sign from source that when something is said that the universe enjoys, we get a little thumbs up.
I know. It's literally never happened before in any of our conversations. It's hilarious.
I don't know what's going on either, but well, I'll take it.
It's better than a thumbs down. So yeah, I'm okay with it.
That's true.
So for anyone listening that wants to follow your journey, work with you, how can they do so? Where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on TikTok. You can find me. It's like at Brittany Bento, Instagram at Brittany Bento with the number 3 at the end because Brittany Bento was taken already. YouTube, Brittany Bento. I also have a podcast with my friend Holly called the Multiple Truths Podcast. I have my own podcast that is kind of like my diary sort of a thing called Going Beyond with Brittany, but I also post like YouTube. I post that on my YouTube as well. And I recently, one thing I'm most excited about right now is me and Holly, we just launched our new community. So it's on a platform called School, and it's like a learning platform. And between the two of us, we have like mind, body, spirit things. So we talk about how to connect with your intuition, how to connect with your body. I have pick a card readings. There's guided meditations. There's healthy recipes. I have my personal training certification. So I have workouts on there as well. And it's just like a place to connect with like-minded people who are also on this path because it can be kind of lonely sometimes, especially when you're just like starting this journey. So I'm really excited about that. It's called The Beehive on School. And then if you want to book a reading with me, you can do so through my website. It's like Brittany, I don't even know my website, brittnybento-readings.ca, I think, something like that. But yeah, like if you look at one of my profiles, you can find the links to everything.
I'll link it. I'll link it in the show notes. But perfect. Man, you are serving, that's for sure. You got all these different platters. You can, choose which one you want to eat off of. That's fantastic. Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.